Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'll be sharing with you Chapter 18 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled God's Creative Action, You Have Free Will. This is where I'm going to help you to understand this being God, so that if you'd like to have a relationship with this being and make your way to enlightenment, you can. But if you're not interested in having a relationship with this being, you can also do that and still get to enlightenment as well. So I'm going to help you to understand the various aspects of this being, because there might be certain things that you've been taught at different times that your mind is just believing, and you haven't been able to independently verify certain aspects of this individual being. By you understanding this being, then you'll be able to actually have a healthy relationship with this being if you choose. And if you're not interested in having a relationship with this being, you can do that as well. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. And at the same time, I'll invite you to join for meditation, because we start each one of our classes with meditation. Then I'm going to move into this talk on God's creative action. You have free will. So the way that I start our meditation is I do some chanting to ease us into the meditation, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance. There's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti Pisu Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rogavitu Anupero Puri sa dhamma sati sata tawa manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Photang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. All right, if you'd like to make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see you, everyone in the class today. As I mentioned to you, I'm going to be sharing this topic with you of God's creative action. You have free will. This is chapter 18 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's important to understand this topic because you may or may not be interested in having a relationship with this being of God. And depending on what your mind is currently thinking about this being, there might be certain things that you need to understand in order to help you continue to make your way to enlightenment while having a relationship with this being or not having a relationship with this being. Oftentimes there's certain things that we're taught as we're growing up that may or may not actually be true. And your mind might have been conditioned to believe certain things where what you would like to be able to do is independently verify everything that you're learning so that then you can have wisdom, making wise decisions and guiding your way towards enlightenment. So what I'm going to share with you today are topics about this being of God, helping you to understand this being so that if you choose to have a relationship with this being, you'll be able to do that. But if you aren't interested in that, you can also get to enlightenment without a relationship with this being, because it's not God who determines whether you actually get to enlightenment or not. So that's why you can choose for yourself of whether or not you're going to have a relationship with this being. But as I mentioned, oftentimes we're taught different things that'll hinder us from being able to either have a relationship or not have a relationship. As we go today, you're always welcome to ask any and all questions. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So to get us started, I'd like to just share some definitions so that you understand what I'm talking about when I'm referring to this being of God. The way that I think about this being of God is the creator of the universe, the source of all moral authority, the supreme being. Now, some people refer to this being as God, others refer to this being as Allah, and there's other ways to refer to this being as well. Essentially, this is an all-knowing, all-powerful being that is omniscient and omnipotent. Whether you consider this to be what you think about this being or not is up to you, but at least you understand how I'm referring to this being, so that when I use the term God, you'll know that what I'm referring to, which is this particular being here. And when you hear me speak, I might use the pronoun he when referring to God, because all my interactions with this being, I've sensed that this being is of a male gender, but some people think about this being as other genders, maybe a female or maybe no gender whatsoever. And if that's the way you think about this being, that's up to you, but you'll hear me occasionally refer to this being with the pronoun of he. Now, when I say that this being is the source of all moral authority, then what we can understand about this moral authority is that when we practice moral conduct or virtuous behavior, this is maintaining and acting upon high principles for proper conduct, and certain conduct that's going to produce wholesome results in our life. And it's this being who is kind of the source of that moral authority, that as we practice these natural laws, then these natural laws were actually created by this being, and now we understand through the path to enlightenment more and more of what these natural laws are, and we start functioning through these moral conduct that is going to produce wholesome results in our day-to-day life. Ultimately, we have free will. Sometimes people are taught that this being is controlling you, or this being has a plan for you, or this being has a certain destiny or fate that they've decided for you, and that you need to fulfill that plan, or you need to live out that fate or destiny. This isn't actually true. Each one of us have our own free will. And you can independently verify this, because you can think about things in your life and ask yourself, who chose those things? So if you look at the hairstyle that you currently have, however your hair looks, ask yourself, who chose that? Think about the clothing that you're wearing right now. Ask yourself, who chose that? Think about where you live. Who chose that? Think about the type of occupation or job, or whether you even work or not. Who chose that? You can go through each individual thing about your life, and you can see that everything that you're experiencing, they're choices that you have made. This is your free will. Every single being has free will. There's nobody that can force you to do any particular thing. The only thing that you're required to do in this life is die. Everything else is optional. The only thing that we're actually required to do, and we cannot change this, is this body is impermanent and it will ultimately die. So that's what you're going to experience. But everything else is optional, and it's based in your own free will. As I mentioned, God doesn't grant enlightenment. God's not the one who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. It's your own decisions through your own wholesome actions and your own choices that determine whether or not you're going to get to enlightenment. If you choose to train your mind through your own free will, then you can make your way towards enlightenment. It's not this being that determines whether you experience enlightenment or not. In terms of Gotama Buddha's teachings about this being of God, he never denied the existence of God, but instead he taught people how to attain enlightenment while still having an understanding of this being of God. Sometimes people say that the Buddha denied the existence of God, or you even hear people go as far as saying the Buddha rejected God. This isn't true. This is coming from people who haven't actually read and studied the original teachings of the Buddha. If you look at the original teachings of the Buddha, you'll see multiple places where he references this being. He refers to this being as the great Brahma. That's the way that he refers to it, because that's how they referred to God during his lifetime, as Brahma. So he refers to this all-knowing, all-powerful supreme being as the great Brahma. And you'll see this in his teaching. So oftentimes people translate it that way. When the Buddha is talking about this being of God, they will translate it as the great Brahma. But there's other translators that will just put the word God in there. So the Buddha never denied the existence of this being. And a Buddha is only going to teach things that they know to be true. So the Buddha wouldn't have taught about God if he just believed in God. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any beliefs. You know the truth. So he wouldn't have just taught about this being if he had no background or no understanding of this being whatsoever. He would have had interactions with this being in order to be able to teach about it. So the Buddha discusses not only this great Brahma, but he also discusses other various gods that people believed in during that lifetime, because he needed people to understand how they were thinking about these particular gods and how they could either understand those and make their way to enlightenment or not. So the Buddha's objective wasn't to prove or disprove God's existence. His goal was to help share the teachings that lead people to liberation, where the mind can be free of these discontent feelings. He was leading people towards enlightenment. And a belief in God or any other belief isn't going to lead someone to enlightenment. So in order to get to enlightenment, you need to have independently verifiable truth to acquire wisdom. So he didn't have any evidence that either proved or disproved God's existence. So he didn't offer anything that would allow anybody to either prove or disprove God's existence, because that's not the way God functions. If God's going to share things with you and help you in certain aspects of your life, that being is going to do that on a personal level, on a one-on-one level. There's not a way for us to independently verify this being of God. I can share with you things that will help you to have a relationship with this being, and then this being can communicate with you and you can experience that communication, but you wouldn't be able to take that and then go show it to somebody else and have them independently verify it. But for you, you can verify within your own practice that this being absolutely exists. But whether you choose to do that or not is up to you. So the Buddha wasn't trying to prove or disprove God's existence. Instead, he was helping people to understand how to get to enlightenment so that they could experience the peace and joy of this enlightened mental state. So the Buddha focused practitioners' minds on liberation, on how to get to enlightenment. And this is based in right view and the natural law of dhamma. So right view is all about understanding any discontent feelings that you have in your mind are being caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, that your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings are being caused by your own mind. It's being caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. God's not the one who's causing these particular feelings. So you need to establish right view where you accept responsibility for your own feelings and emotions that are going on in your mind. In every other aspect of your life too, whatever is happening in your life, it's based on decisions that you're making. And you're going to need to understand the natural law of dhamma. And that's why I've been teaching you that all the way through this program of this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. That when you make a decision either wisely or unwisely, it's going to lead to either wholesome or unwholesome results. Because sometimes people are taught that what they experience in their day-to-day life is because of God, and that it's God that's controlling what you experience. And if you thought that way, you actually wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. So you're going to need to establish right view, and you're going to need to be able to see the natural law of dhamma very clearly so that you can understand that what you experience is not based in God's creative actions, that you actually have free will, and what you experience on a day-to-day basis is based in your free will, in your own decisions. And when you put out decisions either wisely or unwisely, it's going to produce either wholesome or unwholesome results. So this is one of the teachings from the Buddha on God. There's a whole host of teachings that he shares, but I'm just going to share this one so you can see that what the Buddha is talking about is that you have free will. And it also confirms for you that the Buddha did indeed teach about God. So when you hear people say that he rejected the existence of God or he denied the existence of God, you'll know that that's not true, because you can see here in his own words that he's actually teaching about this being. This is just one aspect of his teachings about this being of God, where other teachings has other things. This is about helping you to see that you have free will. So this particular teaching is titled, All is Caused by God's Creative Action. He says, then monks, I approach those ascetics and Brahmins who hold such a doctrine in view as this: whatever this person experiences, whether pleasure, pain, or neither pain nor pleasure, all that is caused by God's creative activity. And I said to them, is it true that you venerable ones hold such a doctrine in view? When I ask them this, they affirm it. Then I say to them, In such a case, is it due to God's creative activity that you might destroy life, take what is not given, indulge in sexual activity, speak falsehood, produce argumentative speech, speak harshly, indulge in idle chatter, that you might be full of longing, have a mind of ill will, and hold wrong view? Those who fall back on God's creative activity as the essential truth have no interest to do what should be done, and to avoid doing what should not be done, nor do they make an effort in this respect. Since they do not apprehend as true and valid anything that should be done or should not be done, they are muddle-minded. They do not guard themselves, and even the personal designation aesthetic could not be legitimately applied to them. So what he's doing here is he's talking about this experience where he went and talked with some ascetics, meaning people who have given up worldly life in order to pursue enlightenment. These are individuals who are learning from other teachers. And he went and talked to Brahmin, who are Hindu priests, who they usually are, praying to God and having a lot of beliefs in God. And they have this idea or this opinion or this view that whatever they experience in terms of discontentedness, pleasure, pain, or neither pain nor pleasure, that is caused by God, that God is the one who's causing their discontentedness. And when the Buddha asked them if that's what they truly think, they affirm it. They say, yes, that's what we think, is that God is the one who's causing our discontent feelings. And the Buddha says, well, then in that situation, since you think that God's the one who's causing these discontent feelings, is it God that causes you to kill? Is it God who causes you to steal? Is it God who causes you to indulge in sexual activity or lie or have argumentative speech or have harsh speech or speak with idle chatter, that you might be full of longing? That's craving, desire, attachment. Is it God that's going to be the one who's causing you to have craving, desire, attachment? Is it God that's the one who's causing you to have anger, hatred, ill will? And is it God who's causing you to have wrong view, meaning this ignorance or a knowing of true reality? And then the Buddha says that, okay, if you're falling back on it's God that's the one who's causing all these things as your essential truth, then you have no interest to do what should be done or avoid doing what should not be done. Meaning you have no interest in making wise decisions to improve your life, and you have no interest in getting rid of these unwise decisions that are causing harm in your life. So you're not have an interest in making wise or unwise decisions and seeing what the truth is about those, so that you can then purify what it is that you experience on a day-to-day basis in terms of what you experience. And he says they don't make an effort in this respect, because if God is the one who's controlling everything and God is the one who is causing you to experience these discontent feelings, then why would you ever make an effort to change anything about your life? So that's what the Buddha is saying, is that because you think that God is causing all of these things, you don't even make an effort to improve your life because you can't change God. And then the Buddha goes on and he says, since they do not essentially understand anything that's true and valid, and they're not doing what should be done and avoiding what should not be done, they're muddle-minded, meaning they're lacking concentration. Because with the pollution of mind, of craving, anger, and ignorance, the mind's going to lack concentration and focus. He says they don't guard themselves, meaning they don't use mindfulness or awareness of mind to protect the mind, because that's one of the things that you learn, is to protect the mind with mindfulness. And then he goes on and he says the personal designation aesthetic could not even legitimately be applied to them. If you were an ascetic, that means you were on the path to enlightenment. So if the personal designation could not even be legitimately applied to them, what he's saying is that if you believe God is the one who's controlling all these things that you experience, then you're not even on the path to enlightenment, because you're not training your own mind to cultivate the wisdom to make wise decisions and avoid unwise decisions. So this is a teaching where you can see the Buddha is essentially saying you have free will, and it's not God that determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. And he's helping you to be able to see that through his discourse here. So here you can see that the Buddha did indeed teach about God. This is just one discourse, but there's others as well. In terms of other teachings related to this kind of topic of things you might have experienced as you were growing up or things you might have been exposed to, there's undeclared teachings of the Buddha, where he, of course, has 45 volumes of books that are this thick, that this is what we call the Pali Canon. This is the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha. But we don't have everything that the Buddha ever taught in the Pali Canon, but what we have left is in 45 volumes of books, and he taught a whole variety of topics. But then there's certain discourses where he highlights the things that he did not teach. And this is important to understand as it relates to this topic of God, because he says, remember, students, essentially, what did I teach? And he gives you the things that he taught. And then he says, remember what I did not teach. I did not teach these things. These are his undeclared teachings. Whether the world is eternal or not eternal. What he means is like the universe and the whole world. He didn't teach whether it's going to last forever, or he didn't teach whether it's going to end at some point. Same thing as whether the world is finite or infinite in terms of the size and space of this world. He didn't teach that the soul is the same as the body, or the soul is one thing and the body is another. In fact, he never even taught that there is a soul or there isn't a soul. He just left it as an undeclared teaching. Then he didn't teach after death the Tathagata exists, meaning himself. He doesn't teach whether an enlightened being after death exists, whether they do not exist, they both exist or do not exist, or they neither exist nor do not exist. So he never taught what happens after enlightenment, because you'll find some people that will say that after enlightenment you do not exist, or after enlightenment you're going to reside in some Buddha land somewhere, or after enlightenment you're going to go to be with God forever when you die. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never taught whether there is something next or there isn't something next. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is so peaceful and so joyful that it doesn't matter what is next. Your mind is peaceful and joyful in the present moment. Your mind isn't longing, yearning for some kind of afterlife. You've already created the perfect and most ideal life for yourself, that your mind is completely peaceful and joyful in the present moment. So the Buddha never taught these kinds of things. So if your mind is clinging to this idea that you're going to die and then you're going to live for eternity with God, you're going to need to let that go, because that's longing, yearning for an afterlife. That's being attached to God. You're going to need to get to the point where in the present moment, you have peace and joy in the present moment, and your mind's not longing, yearning for something after this. So now I'm going to share with you some things to help you understand this being of God more closely, and how you can get to enlightenment while still having a relationship with this being. And then towards the end, I'm going to share with you how to get to enlightenment without a relationship with this being. Because as I mentioned, a relationship with God is not required to attain enlightenment. But also, having a relationship with God won't hinder you either if you practice in the way that I'm sharing with you here. Because oftentimes people have been taught that God controls everything, but you need to be able to understand right view as it relates to God, that what you experience is based on your decisions. This being isn't controlling you. This being isn't forcing you to do anything. This being doesn't have a plan for you that you have to figure out what their plan is and live up to their plan. This being has given you complete free will to be able to make any and all decisions that you would like to make. And this being isn't going to force you or control you to do anything at all. You're going to need to eliminate any particular craving in the mind related to this being of God. If you've been taught to pray to God and you ask this being for things, this is your craving, desire, attachment. Like, God, please give me more money. Give me a new job. Give me better friends. Give me a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Or give me this or give me that. That is craving, desire, attachment. That's like treating God like a genie in a bottle. And if you're praying like this, where you're praying to God, asking for things, this is not going to lead to your enlightenment, because there's craving, desire, attachment there, and there's wrong view, because the mind thinks that this being is going to magically make something appear for you, where you need to understand that anything you experience is based on your own decisions. It's the natural law of dhamma, of cause and effect. Anything that you experience in life is going to come from decisions that you make. And you can independently verify what I'm sharing with you here on these two topics. Like with right view, you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings. And you can see with prayer that it's not God that is the one who's making things magically appear for you. You can pray to God right now and ask God for $10 million, and that you're planning to give that money to the poor people that need this money, and you're going to help feed the impoverished people, and see if God does that for you. See if $10 million magically appears in front of you. And you can see that this being isn't a genie in a bottle, and you can't acquire things through prayer. If people could acquire things through prayer, then none of us would lack for anything. That means if we prayed, every single one of us would get what we wanted, and there would be nothing that we would be lacking. But as you see, that we only experience things based on our own decisions. So if you're going to pray, it's important to make sure you don't have craving, desire, attachment, and you're not asking God for things, treating this being like a genie in a bottle. If you would like to pray, you can let this being know through your prayer that you believe in this being, and maybe you even know that this being actually exists. You can actually pray and say, I know that you exist. Or you can say, I believe you exist. Or you can say, I don't know if you exist. But if you exist, I'm open to your guidance and anything you would like to share with me, and give thanks for this being in your life. And if you pray in this way, at some point, this being could potentially make it known to you that they exist, because this being is capable of helping you to be able to see that they exist. And they usually do that on a one-on-one basis. So this being can actually provide you wisdom that's going to help you along the path. But this being doesn't do that at your own beck and call. It's not like you can press a button and this being is just going to tell you whether to turn left or turn right. But if you tell this being that you're open to their guidance, at some point in the future, as this being feels like it's important to provide you guidance, they can do that. And they do it through your own mind, that they have, it's almost like a fatherly advice inside your own mind. But when you're getting those thoughts and ideas coming through your mind from this being, you still can't believe in those things, because there's other beings out there too, like Mara and other beings, either wholesome or unwholesome beings, that can also communicate with you. And you can't just do whatever comes through your mind. You're going to need to learn, reflect, and practice. You're going to need to be able to discern whether this is a wise decision for you or not. And when this being is giving you guidance, it doesn't mean you have to run off and do it, or else they're going to punish you. That's not the way this being functions. They don't reward you and punish you. This being is helping you through guidance, and then whether you choose to do those things or not is up to you. But you're still going to need to be able to discern whether those particular ideas and thoughts are wise or not, because you need to have that wisdom yourself. So if you would like to do this kind of thing, you can. And you're going to need to eliminate any craving, desire, attachment you have for existence with this being in heaven. If you have that, where you've been taught that after this life you're going to exist in heaven with this being, and now that's the ultimate goal of your life, you're going to need to get rid of any craving, desire, attachment that you have to exist with this being in heaven, because you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment if you have that. Because sometimes we've been taught that that's the ultimate goal of this life, is to do a whole bunch of good things in this life, and when you die you're going to exist with God in heaven. And if you've been taught that way, that's the mind longing, yearning to exist with this being. You need to get to the point where you're peaceful and joyful in the present moment, and the mind isn't longing, yearning to exist with this being of God in heaven. You're going to need to eliminate any and all craving, desire, attachment to this being of God. Whereas if your mind's longing, yearning, or trying to live up to what you think this being's expectations are, or anything like that, you're going to need to get to the point where you understand you're an independent practitioner, cultivating wisdom, making wise decisions, and your goal isn't to live up to this being's expectations or anything like that. Then, in terms of the natural law of Dhamma, you're going to need to understand this cause and effect, and action and result, that everything you experience is based on your decisions. It's not based on God. So the natural law of Dhamma is showing you, and is the most unbiased teacher you will ever find, because it's helping you to be able to see in situations where you're making wise decisions, you're going to experience wholesome results. And where you're making unwise decisions, you're going to experience unwholesome results. So the natural law of Dhamma is what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. God isn't punishing you and rewarding you or anything like that. God doesn't do that. The natural law of Dhamma is this cause and effect or action and result, and you're going to experience the results of your decisions. And you need to be able to come to that understanding and be able to see this natural law very clearly. If you've been taught to fear God, because sometimes people teach you this, that you're somehow supposed to fear this being, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment if you have fear in your mind. And how could you ever get to a healthy relationship with anybody, including God, if you have fear? Imagine if you lived with a roommate or you lived with a life partner and you have fear of that individual, and every single time that they come home, you're fearing what may or may not happen when they come home, you wouldn't be able to have a healthy relationship with this individual. So if you've been taught to fear God, because sometimes people think God is punishing them and rewarding them, and then you've been taught to fear this being, you need to be able to see the truth that this being isn't punishing you and rewarding you, that this being isn't a being that you need to fear. This being wouldn't be interested in you fearing them, because they know that that wouldn't promote a healthy relationship. So there's actually historical text that will say to you that you should fear this being. And I'm here to share with you that there's no reason whatsoever that you need to fear anything at all, including this being of God. And if you're interested in having a healthy relationship with this being, you're going to need to eliminate any and all fear that you have related to this being, because there's nothing to fear here. This being isn't controlling you. They're not punishing you. They're not rewarding you. There's none of those things going on. Then sometimes when I share these kinds of things about prayer and that God isn't controlling you and you don't have to fear this being and things like this, sometimes people ask, well, what's going on with this being? How can we understand this being of God? Well, the way that you can understand this being is because this being is the creator. You can think about this being as another practitioner of these teachings, that this being is enlightened, that they've practiced these teachings, they know these teachings, they're the creator of these natural laws. And now this individual is enlightened. They're highly enlightened. So you can think of them as a practitioner of these teachings. You can also think of it as this being is not attached to us, and they're not responsible for restraining us. Sometimes when people see like a murder or a rape in the world, they might say, oh gosh, how could this occur? If God was really a loving God and God is the all-knowing and all-powerful, how could God allow this to actually happen? Right? Well, it's not God that's allowing that to happen, because God's not controlling you. You don't live in a world where God is controlling you. And if we did live in that world, we wouldn't be interested in living in that world, because we'd be like robots where another being was controlling us. So God isn't allowing murder to happen. God isn't allowing rapes to happen. God isn't allowing poverty and famine and things like this to happen. These are all choices that we as human beings are making that is leading to these particular results. And God's role is not to restrain us from the evil things that we're doing. God isn't attached to us and wanting certain things for us. God is interested in seeing us live in harmony with all of us, but God's not attached to that. It's up to us to decide that we're interested in living in harmony with each other and make wise decisions for that. So God's role isn't to restrain us. And one of the things I can give you as an example of this is that when my son was very young, when he was like maybe 9 months or 1 year old, we were in our apartment at that time, and I was taking care of my son, and there was a stove that was really hot. And he kept walking over to the stove and kept walking over to the stove. He kept wanting to touch the stove. And I kept restraining him and restraining him and restraining him and stopping him from touching the stove. But eventually he kept going back to the stove. So I just let him go over towards the stove. And when he got there and he could feel the heat of the stove, he pulled his hand back and he realized that the stove was hot. And he decided to never touch the stove again after that. Right? But as long as I kept restraining him, he didn't have the wisdom to understand that that stove was hot. So he kept wanting to touch it. But the moment I let him cultivate the wisdom, then he didn't make the decision to touch the stove anymore. So if God was constantly going around restraining us from the evils and unwholesome things and the unwise things that we're doing, we would never cultivate the wisdom of how to do things ourselves and make wise decisions. So that's why this being doesn't restrain us from the unwise decisions, because otherwise this being would be constantly restraining us, because we would never actually cultivate the wisdom, just like my son. So this being is not attached to us, not wanting and longing, yearning for us to be any particular way, and instead provides us this free will to be able to make any and all decisions that we like, and we get to cultivate wisdom and then make wise decisions. As I mentioned, this being is interested in seeing us live in harmony, but we need to do that through acquiring wisdom. It's not going to be through this being making decisions for us that we will actually experience harmony. Sometimes people think that Jesus is going to float down from the clouds, that they're going to snap their finger, and then instantly the world's going to become a peaceful place. This isn't the way it's going to work. But let's just say that that did occur, and God decided to snap his fingers and instantly create peace in the world. Well, in a matter of seconds, because human beings don't have the wisdom, we'll be right back into the same problems that we had all along, because we're going to start making all these unwise decisions. So this being God or any other beings like Jesus that people are thinking are going to come back and save the world and snap their fingers and instantly create peace in the world, this isn't the way that it's going to work. It's each individual cultivating wisdom and then making wise decisions that the world's going to become a more and more peaceful place. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on having a relationship with God before I move into talking about if you have no interest in having a relationship with God whatsoever and how to get to enlightenment through that. But if you would like to have a relationship with God, this would be the way to do it. That you understand right view, and that everything you experience is a result of your decisions, and it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, to eliminate any craving to be with this being of God and ensure that you're not having craving, desire, attachment in your prayer, that you understand the natural law of dhamma, of cause and effect, or action and result, that everything you experience is based in your decisions. You're going to need to eliminate your fear of this being of God and understand that this being isn't attached to us and they're not responsible to restrain us. While they are interested in seeing us live in harmony, it's up to us to make those decisions to be able to choose to live in harmony. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like through Zoom. It looks like Leo has a question. Go ahead, sir.
I think you do it. I think I asked something like that in the past, but yeah, I'm still wondering if God is all powerful, why he didn't create all beings right at the beginning as enlightened beings. Yeah, I think maybe you don't have an answer here. I don't know if the Buddha had this, but yeah.
Yeah, I can share with you an answer here. Basically what you're describing is that human beings would come preloaded with software like a computer, and that we would already be thinking in exactly the way that God wants us to think, because this would be God controlling us. So if God had every single being born already enlightened, then basically God is preloading us with thoughts, ideas, opinions, and views, and that would be based on what God's will is. Instead, God is doing the most loving and kind thing, which is allowing us to make our own choices and not putting his expectations on us and not requiring us to think in any particular way. So instead, we are born in the way that we're born, and we have a lack of wisdom, and it's up to us to choose to cultivate that wisdom instead of God choosing for us the way that God wants us to think.
Okay. And I also would like to ask, I'm wondering about the example where you compare the relationship we can have with God with the relationship with the neighbor. Could you explain that? How you see their similarities?
Yeah, so with a neighbor, we can either choose to have a relationship with them or not. And if we choose to have a relationship with our neighbor, it usually works out best for us because when we need help, we have somebody there that we can talk to. Like we can talk to our neighbor, say, hey, we're going on vacation. Would you mind looking over our house? Or we can go to our neighbor and say, hey, I'm making this recipe. I have something in the oven. I need a little bit of salt and don't have time to go to the store. Can I borrow just a little bit of salt? Right? We have a neighbor that if we have a healthy relationship with that individual, then this is beneficial for us and it produces beneficial results in our life. But also, we can choose not to have a relationship with our neighbor and we will live life just fine. We will be just fine without that relationship. We're not required to have a relationship with our neighbor. But if we do, it's to our benefit. And if we don't, that's okay too. And we still live life just fine. And a relationship with God is exactly the same way. If we choose to have a relationship with God, this will be beneficial for us. But if we choose not to have a relationship with God, that's okay too. And we can still live our life. We can still get to enlightenment. So that's why I use the analogy of a neighbor, because you can understand this as it relates to this being of God.
So, for me, I choose to have a relationship with God, but I couldn't verify if He exists right now, since I'm doing it since a while. What you said, like thanking Him for being in this world, getting to enlightenment, that there's a possibility, and so on, and that I'm interested in His guidance. I don't do it every time because I often forget it. Maybe my interest is not too strong, but but there is interest, and but I don't know. So yeah,
If you have,
I couldn't see him, or couldn't. There was no conversation between us. So you have ideas why this is like that?
yes, if you have a craving to verify this being's existence, or if you have a craving for a relationship with this being won't actually contact you during that period of time. You're going to need to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment for contact from this being and verifying this being's existence. And when you eliminate your craving, that's when this being will be able to then connect with you, because this being is not interested in you having an attachment to it. So it waits until you actually eliminate your craving, desire, attachment before it makes contact with you.
So always when I say these things in my mind, I would be interested in having your guidance. Isn't there automatically a craving coming with that?
No.
How I can solve this problem with I think there might be some cravings, not strong. I don't see them strong cravings, but of course, if I say to him, I'm interested in having your guidance, and so on, I think there might be a craving, underlying craving. How to solve that?
Yeah, so just asking for guidance doesn't mean there's a craving. So this is where you need to understand what a craving is a longing and yearning, chasing after something. Just the fact that you do something doesn't mean there's a craving there. But I do suspect you do have a craving because, as you know, you've had a craving for my guidance at different times, and you're working on eliminating that. So if you have a craving for my guidance, I could easily see you have a craving for this being's guidance too. So if you work on eliminating your craving, desire, attachment for my guidance, then it can help you eliminate the craving, desire, attachment for the guidance from this being. If you've already said once or twice, it sounds like even more than that, where you've asked this being to provide you guidance and you're open to their guidance, then just done. Leave it at that. Just go on with your life and almost forget about this being. And then that will help your mind to let go of any kind of longing, yearning for this being to be in your life.
Okay, so I just set it aside. He knows that I'm interested, and in 1 year or whenever he will maybe.
Don't have a time frame. Don't think in 1 year he's going to do this or 1 month he's going to do this. Just go forward with your life, cultivating the wisdom that you need. This being knows that you're interested in its guidance, and when it can see that you've eliminated your cravings for its guidance or for a relationship with this being, that's when this being will then be able to come into your life, because this being won't step in and provide you guidance and have a relationship until it can see that you actually have eliminated your craving, desire, attachment.
But isn't the guidance now most important? Because I'm in the beginning, if I already deleted my craving for him, I may be already in the first stage, also on, then I don't need his
No.
guidance.
No, you would benefit from God's guidance, and you're getting guidance from me that's going to help you. I can guide you either with a relationship with this being or without a relationship with this being. But as I've shared with you, having a relationship where there's a craving, desire, attachment is very detrimental, because there's going to be discontentedness, and this being isn't interested in having a relationship with you if you're attached to it, because that's going to be essentially sabotaging the relationship that you can have with this being. This being knows that in order to have a healthy relationship with you, you need to be not attached to this being, because this being's not attached to you. But if you're attached to this being, then you're going to have discontentedness based on that craving, desire, attachment, and it's going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. So once you're able to eliminate your cravings related to this being, either craving for its guidance or craving for a relationship, then it's going to be understanding that this is the time to then have a relationship with you. Because otherwise, if they start having a relationship with you while that craving, desire, attachment is in place, then you won't actually eliminate it.
Okay, and I will know when he gives me guidance, I will know that. I will see, this is so powerful, this must be God. Or
yeah, it's going to be wisdom far beyond anything that you've ever thought about in your life. And you'll know that it's this being, because you don't have that wisdom. And this being also can perform miracles in front of you too, in a way that you know that it's this being. This being is very wise. If it's interested in helping you to be able to see of its existence and provide you guidance, you will know without a doubt that it's this being.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have anything else. All right, I'm not seeing anything else anywhere. So now let me help you understand how to get to enlightenment if you're not interested in a relationship with this being. Because sometimes people have had different experiences in their day-to-day life where maybe they were involved in a church or a church community, and maybe they've had difficulties and struggles in that environment. Maybe they've even been abused or sexually abused by individuals in that environment, and they're attributing that to God, because these people who've abused you either physically, sexually, verbally, or anything like this, they're acting based on their choices and decisions. It's not God that's choosing to abuse you. But if you've actually had those types of experiences, you might actually hate this being, because you're maybe attributing the actions of those people that have done these unfortunate things to you as having come from God, when in reality, those things didn't come from God. They came from actual individual people. So if you have no interest in a relationship with God whatsoever, you're going to at least need to get to a point where you have loving kindness for all beings, including God. So if you have anger, hatred, and ill will, or frustration, or anything like this towards this being of God, you're going to need to eliminate that from your mind so that you can then go forward without having any relationship with this being whatsoever. The way that you eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will towards God, and you cultivate loving kindness towards this being, is if you have this anger towards God, you're going to need to insert this being into your loving kindness meditation. And then this will allow you to cultivate in your own mind this loving kindness towards this being. And again, in this situation, you don't need to have a relationship with this being, but you need to at least release any kind of anger, hatred, or ill will that's in your mind. Because even if you have anger, hatred, and ill will in your mind towards an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend, or maybe somebody has died and you no longer are even having a relationship with that person because they've died, if you have anger, hatred, and ill will in your mind, you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment, because there's still that fetter or that pollution or taint of anger, hatred, and ill will in your mind. So if you have anger, hatred, and ill will towards any being whatsoever, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. And that includes this being God. So if you're interested in getting to enlightenment without a relationship with this being of God, you're going to need to at least be sure that you don't have any anger, hatred, and ill will in your mind. And if that's where you are right now and you aren't interested in having a relationship with this being, done. End of story. Move forward in your life. You have no anger towards this being. Maybe you don't even know if this being exists, and you're just not interested in having a relationship with this being. Done. End of story. Walk forward in your life. But if you're not interested in having a relationship with this being and you have anger, hatred, and ill will, you're going to need to release that through loving kindness meditation. And then if you're interested in having a relationship with this being, you're going to need to understand the things that I taught previously. So this is everything that I have to share with you guys. I'm going to open up for any questions that you guys have related to this topic before we end class, because I just gave you a little bit more information here. And I'd like to just be sure that any questions that you guys have related to this topic get addressed. So you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, looks like Leo has some questions.
Because I just wanted to ask about the Lord's Prayer. Is that something I could still do, or is it also something you would say, okay, put it aside? Because there's also some kind of praying inside.
There's no craving in the Lord's Prayer. If you would like to do the Lord's Prayer, you can do that. You'll see it in chapter 11 that I share. And then I shared the translation of that, or my understanding of that, in the glossary at the end of the book. You'll be able to see the meaning behind those words. And there's no craving in that prayer.
Should I internalize the meaning of you
Yes.
to understand it? So when I say it in my mind, should I know what he actually what he actually means by that? What Jesus actually means by that?
Yes, if you look in the glossary of the book that I share, you'll see the meaning of that. And if you internalize that, that would be very helpful for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So I'm just going to end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for being interested to learn about these teachings. And as you guys need help, you're always welcome to reach out. You can ask questions in a live class. You can post in our Facebook group. You can send me messages, and you can also schedule personal guidance. Next week in chapter 19, I'm going to be teaching the difficult human existence, sickness, aging, and death. This is where I teach about the life story of the Buddha, helping you guys understand more about his life, and also these impactful times of sickness, aging, and death, because oftentimes people really struggle with their own sickness, aging, and death, and they have discontentedness around that. And also, when people around you are experiencing sickness, aging, and death, you might struggle with that. So I'm going to teach you about this particular topic of the life story of the Buddha and these 3 impactful times during your life where you're experiencing sickness, aging, and death, or the people around you are experiencing that, and helping you understand that so that you don't have to have struggles and sorrow and grief and despair when you're experiencing these kinds of things. And then, of course, on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students and opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. Here today, in about 1 hour, I'm going to be starting a class in California that's going to be live streamed that is about the natural law of dhamma. So if you're interested in learning that topic, you can learn that. I'm also going to be teaching what is merit, continued support on the path to enlightenment, how to integrate these teachings into your day-to-day life. And then this afternoon, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation. So if you'd like to attend either through Zoom or our live stream, you'll be able to attend because we're live streaming all these classes from here. And today I'm going to be wrapping up my course here in California. So again, thank you all for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and take care. Have a wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.